Commander Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the cold metal wall of the observation deck, watching the stars wheel slowly past the viewport of the research vessel Prometheus. 3 years into humanity's first deep space exploration mission, and they were still finding wonders that defied every textbook back on Earth. "Commander, you need to see this." Dr. James Chen's voice crackled through the intercom, barely containing his excitement. Elena pushed off from the wall, her magnetic boots clicking against the deck plating as she made her way through the ship's corridors. The Prometheus was humanity's most advanced vessel, equipped with experimental quantum engines that could fold spacetime, allowing faster-than-light travel. But even with this technology, they were still months away from the nearest habitable system. The science bay hummed with activity as Elena entered. Banks of computers lined the walls, their screens displaying incomprehensible streams of data. Dr. Chen stood at the central holographic display, his usually calm demeanor replaced by barely controlled excitement. "What have you found, James?" Elena asked, studying the swirling patterns of light in the hologram. "A wormhole," Chen said, his voice hushed with awe. "Not a natural one. This is artificial, Commander. Someone built this." Elena felt her blood run cold. The implications were staggering. If the wormhole was artificial, that meant they weren't alone in the universe. More importantly, whatever had built it possessed technology far beyond humanity's current capabilities. "Are you certain?" she asked, though she could see the certainty in Chen's eyes. "The quantum signatures are unlike anything we've seen in natural space-time phenomena. The structure is too perfect, too stable. This was engineered, Commander. And it's active." Elena studied the hologram more closely. The wormhole appeared as a shimmering tunnel of distorted space, its mouth yawning like a cosmic doorway. Energy readings showed massive gravitational fields being manipulated with surgical precision. "How far?" she asked. 47 hours at current velocity. "But Commander, there's something else." Chen manipulated the display, zooming in on the wormhole's event horizon. "We're detecting ships." The image resolved into dozens of sleek vessels arranged in formation around the wormhole. Their design was unlike anything in human databases. Organic curves merged with angular geometric patterns, creating ships that seemed to grow rather than be built. "Aliens," Elena whispered. "That's not all," Chen continued. "Long-range sensors are picking up weapons signatures. Big ones. This isn't a peaceful gathering, Commander. These ships are armed for war." Elena's mind raced through the implications. First contact with an alien species, and they appeared to be mobilizing for conflict. Were they preparing to invade through the wormhole? Or were they defending against something coming from the other side? "Get me Captain Morrison," she ordered. "And prepare a full briefing for the senior staff. We need to decide our next move very carefully." The bridge of the Prometheus fell silent as the alien fleet resolved on the main screen. Dozens of ships hung in space around the wormhole, their biomechanical hulls gleaming with an inner light. Each vessel was unique, as if grown rather than manufactured, with flowing lines that seemed to pulse with organic energy. Captain Morrison stood at the center of the bridge, his weathered face grim. At 62, he was one of the most experienced spaceship commanders in human history, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. "Communications, any response to our hails?" he asked. Lieutenant Sarah Walsh shook her head. "Nothing, sir. We've tried every frequency, every protocol. Either they can't hear us, or they're ignoring us." "Weapon status?" Morrison turned to his tactical officer. "All defensive systems online, but sir..." Lieutenant Commander Torres hesitated. "Our weapons are designed for human technology. Against these ships, we're essentially defenseless." Morrison nodded grimly. The Prometheus carried the latest in human military technology: plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and defensive screens that could deflect most known projectiles. But against an unknown alien technology, they might as well be carrying swords and shields. "Sir," Dr. Chen spoke up from his position at the science station. "I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the alien fleet. Whatever they're preparing to do, it's going to be big." On the screen, The alien ships began to move. They arranged themselves in a complex formation around the wormhole, their movements coordinated with mechanical precision. Energy readings spiked as each vessel powered up systems that human science could barely comprehend. "Sir, the wormhole!" Walsh called out. "Something's coming through!" The space around the wormhole's mouth began to distort, reality bending like heated glass. A new ship emerged, but this one was different. Where the first fleet showed organic curves and flowing designs, this newcomer was angular and dark, its hull seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. "That's a different technology entirely," Chen reported, his instruments working frantically to analyze the new arrival. "The quantum signatures are completely alien to both us and the First Fleet." More ships followed, each one a monument to destructive power. They moved with predatory grace, forming their own battle formation as they emerged from the wormhole. The two fleets faced each other across the void, and Elena realized they were witnessing the opening moments of an interstellar war. "Commander," Morrison said quietly, "recommend we withdraw to a safe distance." Elena was about to agree when the communications console erupted in activity. Walsh's eyes widened as she worked to decode the incoming signal. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission. It's in English." The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at an alien being. It was humanoid in general shape but taller and more slender than any human, with elongated limbs and a face that seemed carved from living crystal. Its eyes were pools of shifting light, and when it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that no human throat could produce. "Humans of the vessel Prometheus," it said, the words somehow perfectly pronounced despite the alien speaker having no apparent vocal cords. "I am Navigator Zephyr of the Confluence Fleet. You have arrived at a critical moment in the fate of multiple species. The entities emerging from the gateway are the Devourers, a race that consumes all life it encounters. We are here to stop them, but our forces alone may not be sufficient." Elena stepped forward, her heart pounding. "Navigator Zephyr, this is Commander Elena Vasquez. What are you asking of us?" The alien's crystalline features seemed to shift with emotion. "Your species is young, but your quantum engines show promise. We request your assistance in sealing this gateway before the Devourer fleet can fully deploy. The survival of countless worlds depends upon it." Morrison looked at Elena, the weight of the decision visible in his eyes. They had come to explore, not to fight in an alien war. But the implications were clear. If these Devourers were as dangerous as Navigator Zephyr claimed, Earth itself might be at risk. "What would you need us to do?" Elena asked. "Your quantum engines can destabilize the wormhole's matrix," Zephyr replied. "But you would need to position your ship at the gateway's event horizon. The risks are considerable." Elena understood the implication. It would likely be a suicide mission. But as she looked at the dark ships continuing to pour through the wormhole, she realized they might not have a choice. The war room aboard the Prometheus had been hastily converted to accommodate their new allies. Navigator Zephyr's holographic projection flickered slightly as the quantum communication array struggled to maintain the connection across space. Beside the alien's image, tactical displays showed the two fleets maneuvering for position around the wormhole. "The Devourers have deployed 73 vessels so far," Zephyr reported, its crystalline features betraying no emotion. "Our intelligence suggests they have at least 200 more waiting to cross through." Elena studied the tactical display. Each Devourer's ship was massive, bristling with weapons that could reduce planets to dust. The Confluence fleet, while technologically advanced, was outnumbered and outgunned. "Tell me about their capabilities," Elena said. "They consume matter and energy to fuel their expansion," Zephyr explained. "Their weapons don't just destroy, they convert matter into raw energy for their use. Entire star systems have been stripped bare to feed their fleets." Captain Morrison leaned forward. "And they're coming from where, exactly?" "The Andromeda Spiral. They consumed everything there and have been searching for new galaxies to devour. This wormhole represents their first successful breach into our galaxy." Dr. Chen was studying the sensor data from the alien ships. "Navigator, your fleet's technology, it appears to manipulate quantum fields at the subatomic level. Is that correct? Yes. We have learned to work with the fundamental forces of reality rather than against them. Your species shows similar potential with your quantum engines, though your technology is still primitive. Elena felt a flash of annoyance at the casual dismissal of human achievement, but pushed it aside. Pride was a luxury they couldn't afford. If we help you close the wormhole, she said, what guarantee do we have that your people won't pose a threat to Earth? Zephyr's form shimmered, and for a moment Elena could have sworn she saw something like surprise in those alien features. Commander, the Confluence is a union of 47 species, all dedicated to the preservation of life in the galaxy. We do not conquer, we protect. Forgive my skepticism, Elena replied, but we've just learned we're not alone in the universe. From our perspective, any advanced alien civilization is a potential threat. Understandable, Zephyr said. Perhaps this will allay your concerns. The holographic display changed, showing a vast space station orbiting a blue-green world. This is one of our protected worlds, a species that achieved sentience only 3,000 years ago. They are now full members of the Confluence, their culture and autonomy completely preserved. Elena studied the image. The space station was clearly of alien design, but the planet below showed signs of the native civilization, cities that followed organic patterns, transportation networks that worked with the planetary environment rather than dominating it. The Confluence exists to ensure that every species has the chance to grow and develop according to their own nature. Zephyr continued. The Devourers represent the antithesis of everything we stand for. A proximity alarm suddenly blared through the ship. On the tactical display, several Devourers ships had broken formation and were heading directly for the Prometheus. They've detected us, Morrison said grimly. All hands to battle stations. Commander, Zephyr said urgently. If you're going to help us, now would be the time to decide. Once the Devourers fully deploy, even our combined forces may not be enough to stop them. Elena looked around the room at her crew. She saw fear in their eyes, but also determination. They had signed up for exploration, not war, but sometimes history made the choice for you. Dr. Chen, she said, can our quantum engines really destabilize the wormhole? Chen nodded. Theoretically, yes. But we need to channel all our power through the quantum matrix simultaneously. The feedback could destroy the ship. And if we don't try? Chen's expression was grim. Then those things get loose in our galaxy, and Earth becomes another dead world in their wake. Elena turned to Morrison. Captain, what's your assessment? The older man was quiet for a long moment. I've seen enough wars to know that sometimes you have to fight, even when the odds are against you. The Devourers won't stop with other species, they'll come for us eventually. Elena nodded and turned back to Zephyr's projection. Navigator, the Prometheus stands with the Confluence. Tell us what we need to do. The engine room of the Prometheus hummed with unprecedented activity, as Chief Engineer Maria Santos worked frantically to reconfigure the quantum drive. Banks of quantum processors lined the walls, their crystalline matrices glowing with contained energy. This technology represented the pinnacle of human achievement, the ability to fold space-time itself and travel faster than light. The modifications are holding, Santos reported over the intercom. But I can't guarantee how long. We're pushing the quantum matrix beyond its design parameters. Elena stood in the command center, watching the tactical display as the Confluence and Devourer fleets engaged each other around the wormhole. Brilliant flashes of energy lit up the void as weapons that could crack planets traded fire across impossible distances. The beauty of it was matched only by its terrible destructiveness. Commander, Dr. Chen called from his station. I'm reading massive quantum fluctuations from the Devourer ships. They're doing something to the wormhole. On the display, the wormhole began to expand. What had been a relatively small aperture was growing larger, allowing bigger ships to pass through. Elena watched in horror as a vessel the size of a small moon began to emerge from the distorted space. Dreadnought class, Navigator Zephyr's voice crackled through the communication array. If that ship fully deploys, it will be able to establish a permanent gateway. The invasion will become unstoppable. Elena made her decision. Santos, how long until we can attempt the quantum destabilization? Give me 10 more minutes, Commander. But once we start, there's no going back. The energy feedback will either collapse the wormhole or tear our ship apart. Understood. Morrison, take us in. The Prometheus accelerated toward the battle, its hull groaning under the stress of emergency maneuvers. Around them, space lit up with weapons fire as Confluence ships tried desperately to hold back the Devourer advance. Elena watched as one of the biomechanical vessels took a direct hit, its organic hull flowering open like a deadly bloom before going dark. Commander, incoming transmission from the Confluence flagship, Walsh reported. Navigator Zephyr's image appeared on the main screen, but now Elena could see the strain in the alien's crystalline features. Behind Zephyr, the bridge of the Confluence ship was a scene of controlled chaos, as crew members worked at stations that seemed to grow from the ship's living hull. Commander Vasquez, our sensors indicate you're moving into the gravity well. Are you certain about this course of action? As certain as we can be, Elena replied. If we can't stop them here, Earth will be next. Your species honors you, Zephyr said solemnly. We will ensure that humanity's sacrifice is remembered. Elena was about to reply when the ship shuddered under a massive impact. On the tactical display, 3 Devourer vessels had broken off from the main battle and were closing on the Prometheus. Evasive maneuvers, Morrison ordered. Return fire! The Prometheus twisted through space, its quantum engines allowing impossible changes in direction. Plasma cannons lanced out, striking one of the pursuing ships. But the effect was minimal. The Devourer vessel's hull seemed to absorb the energy, growing visibly stronger. They're feeding on our weapons fire, Torres reported in disbelief. Every hit just makes them more powerful. Then we don't fight them, Elena said. We outrun them. Santos, how much longer? 3 more minutes! On the screen, the massive Devourer dreadnought was halfway through the wormhole. Elena could see weapons ports opening along its hull like hungry mouths. Once that ship was fully deployed, it would have the firepower to wipe out the entire Confluence fleet. Commander, new contacts! Walsh called out. Something big is coming through the wormhole from the other side. Elena's heart sank. More Devourers? But as the ships emerged, she realized they were different. These vessels were smaller, more agile, and their hulls bore the flowing designs of Confluence technology. Reinforcements. Zephyr's voice carried a note of relief. The Second Fleet has arrived. The newcomers immediately engaged the Devourer forces, their weapons sending cascades of energy through space. But Elena could see it wouldn't be enough. For every Devourer ship destroyed, 2 more emerged from the wormhole. Santos, we need those modifications now. 30 seconds, Commander. The Prometheus shook as a Devourer weapon struck their rear shields. Elena could hear the hull plating buckling under the stress. They were running out of time. Commander, Dr. Chen called out. I'm detecting a massive energy buildup from the dreadnought. It's preparing to fire. Elena looked at the tactical display and felt her blood run cold. The dreadnought's main weapon was powering up, and its target was the Confluence flagship. The blast would not only destroy Navigator Zephyr's ship but would also clear the way for the full Devourer invasion. Santos, Quantum Matrix is online. But Commander, if we fire now, we'll be caught in the gravity well when the wormhole collapses. Elena looked around the bridge at her crew. She saw fear, determination, and something else, acceptance. They all understood what they were being asked to do. Do it, she said quietly. The quantum engines of the Prometheus screamed as they channeled unprecedented amounts of energy through the ship's modified matrix. Elena felt the deck plates vibrating beneath her feet as systems strained beyond their design limits. On the main screen, the wormhole pulsed with unnatural light as spacetime itself began to buckle. Quantum destabilization at 70%, Dr. Chen reported, his voice barely audible over the growing whine of overtaxed machinery. The wormhole's structural integrity is failing. Around them, the battle raged with desperate intensity. Confluence ships threw themselves at the Devourer fleet, trying to buy precious seconds for the Prometheus to complete its mission. Elena watched as Navigator Zephyr's flagship engaged 3 enemy vessels simultaneously, its biomechanical hull flowering with weapon ports that fired streams of coherent energy. "Commander, the dreadnought is firing!" Torres called out. On the tactical display, a lance of crimson light erupted from the massive Devourer ship. The beam was wide enough to encompass a small city, carrying enough energy to vaporize a moon. But instead of targeting the Confluence flagship, it was aimed directly at the Prometheus. "Evasive maneuvers!" Morrison shouted, but they were too close to the wormhole's gravity well. The ship couldn't maneuver effectively while maintaining the quantum destabilization field. The beam struck them amidships, and Elena felt the universe explode around her. Emergency lighting bathed the bridge in hellish red as hull breaches vented atmosphere into space. The artificial gravity fluctuated wildly, sending crew members tumbling across the deck. "Hull breach on deck 7 through 12. Santos's voice crackled through the damaged communications system. "Emergency force fields are holding, but not for long." "Quantum matrix status?" Elena pulled herself back to her feet, tasting blood from where she'd bitten her tongue. "Still stable, but we've lost 30% of our power generation," Chen reported. "At this rate, we might not have enough energy to complete the destabilization." Elena's mind raced. They needed more power, but the ship's fusion reactors were already running at maximum output. There had to be another way. "Santos, what about the emergency power cells?" "Already routing them through the matrix, but it's not enough." On the main screen, the wormhole was visibly unstable now. Flashes of exotic energy rippled along its event horizon as space-time struggled to maintain coherence. But the process was too slow. Even as Elena watched, more Devourer ships pushed through the weakening gateway. "Commander," Navigator Zephyr's voice came through the communications array, distorted by interference from the quantum field. "Our power systems are compatible with yours. We can transfer energy directly to your ship." Elena's eyes widened. It was possible, but it would require both ships to lower their shields and establish a direct connection. In the middle of a battle, it would leave them both vulnerable. "Zephyr, you'll be defenseless. The Devourers will destroy you." "Perhaps. But if the wormhole remains open, we are all dead anyway. Begin your approach." Elena looked at Morrison, who nodded grimly. "All hands brace for impact." "We're going in." The Prometheus turned toward the Confluence flagship, its damaged hull groaning with the stress of maneuvering. Around them, space was alive with weapons fire as the two fleets continued their deadly dance. Elena could see Devourer ships converging on their position, sensing an opportunity. "Shields down," Morrison ordered. "Establishing docking protocols." The two ships came together with surprising gentleness, their hulls touching like two living creatures. Elena felt a strange tingling sensation as the Confluence ship's biomechanical systems interfaced with their own technology. On her instruments, power readings began to climb. "Energy transfer established," Santos reported. "But Commander, the Devourers are closing fast." Through the viewport, Elena could see enemy ships approaching from 3 directions. Their dark hulls seemed to drink in the light from nearby stars, and she could feel a wrongness about them that went beyond their alien nature. These beings didn't just destroy, they unmade things, reducing complex life to base energy. "Quantum destabilization at 90%, Chin called out. "Just a few more seconds." A Devourer weapon struck the joined ships, sending shockwaves through both hulls. Elena watched in horror as sections of the Confluence vessel's organic armor began to wither and die where the beam had touched it. The aliens weren't just shooting to destroy, they were actively consuming their target. 95%! Another hit, this one closer to the docking junction. Elena could hear atmosphere hissing through microfractures in the hull as the ship's structural integrity failed. Emergency teams worked frantically to seal the breaches, but they were running out of time. "Commander," Zephyr's voice was weak now, transmitted through the physical connection between the ships rather than quantum communication. "The energy transfer is complete." You must separate now, or both ships will be destroyed. What about your crew? We will hold them off as long as possible. Go! The docking clamps released with a metallic clang, and the two ships drifted apart. Elena watched as the Confluence flagship turned to face the approaching Devourers, its weapon systems coming online despite massive damage to its hull. 100%! Chen shouted. Quantum destabilization field is critical. On the main screen, the wormhole began to collapse. The event horizon twisted inward on itself like a dying star, and the space around it rippled with gravitational waves. Several Devourer ships caught too close to the gateway were pulled inexorably toward its center, their hulls stretching like taffy before disappearing into the quantum maelstrom. But the dreadnought was fighting back. Elena watched in amazement as the massive ship fired its engines at full power, trying to break free from the collapsing wormhole's gravity well. For a moment, it seemed like it might succeed. It's getting away! Torres called out. Elena made a split-second decision. All power to forward momentum. Ramming speed. Commander, no! Morrison protested. The ship can't take that kind of impact. It doesn't have to survive. Elena replied quietly. It just has to work. The Prometheus accelerated directly toward the struggling dreadnought, its damaged hull shrieking protests as overtaxed engines pushed it beyond safe limits. Behind them, the wormhole continued to collapse, pulling everything nearby into its hungry maw. The collision between the Prometheus and the Devourer dreadnought lit up space like a newborn star. Metal screamed against unknown materials as the human ship's quantum-enhanced hull cut deep into the alien vessel's core. Elena felt the deck buck beneath her feet as shockwaves traveled through the ship's superstructure, each impact threatening to tear the vessel apart. Hull integrity failing. Santos's voice came through the intercom, distorted by static from damaged circuits. We're venting atmosphere on all decks. Elena pulled herself to her feet, her hands working frantically over her console as she tried to maintain control of the quantum destabilization field. Around her, the bridge was a chaos of sparking electronics and emergency lighting. Through the main viewport, she could see the twisted wreckage of both ships tumbling toward the collapsing wormhole. Quantum matrix is destabilizing, Dr. Chen shouted over the noise. The field is going critical. How long? Elena demanded. 30 seconds, maybe less. Elena looked around the bridge at her crew. Morrison was slumped over his station, blood trickling from a head wound but still working to coordinate damage control. Torres was frantically trying to route power to the life support systems. Walsh had abandoned her communication station to help a wounded crewman. They were all going to die. Elena knew it with absolute certainty. The ship was too damaged to escape the wormhole's gravity well, and even if they could, the quantum feedback from the destabilization field would tear them apart at the subatomic level. But they had succeeded. The wormhole was collapsing, taking the Devourer invasion force with it. Earth was safe. Humanity would survive to explore the stars another day. Commander, Navigator Zephyr's voice came through the communication array, weak but clear. We are detecting massive quantum fluctuations from your position. Your ship's matrix is overloading. Elena managed a grim smile. Tell me something I don't know, Navigator. There may be a way to save your crew. Our ships carry emergency quantum pods, small craft designed to survive dimensional collapse. We can launch one toward your position. How many people can it carry? 20, perhaps 25 at most. Elena's heart sank. The Prometheus carried a crew of 93. Even if they could reach the escape pod, most of her people would still die. But 20 lives saved was better than none. Do it, she said. Commander, what about you? Morrison had managed to make his way to her station, his face pale from blood loss. I have to maintain the quantum field until the wormhole completely collapses. If I stop now, the Devourers might be able to stabilize it. Morrison nodded slowly. He understood the mathematics of sacrifice as well as she did. I'll coordinate the evacuation. Elena watched on the tactical display as a small craft detached from the Confluence flagship and began moving toward them. The pod was elegant in its simplicity, a teardrop-shaped vessel that seemed to bend light around itself. It would have to navigate through a battlefield, past Devourers ships and gravitational anomalies, all while the space around them continued to collapse. 25 crew members have been selected for evacuation, Morrison reported. Essential personnel, young officers, people with families. Elena noticed that neither Morrison nor she was on the list. She wasn't surprised. Command had its privileges, but it also had its responsibilities. Launch the evacuation, she ordered. Elena watched the chronometer count down as her crew abandoned ship. Each second brought them closer to total quantum cascade failure. The wormhole was now less than half its original size, its event horizon twisted into impossible geometries that hurt to look at directly. 15 seconds to cascade failure, Chen reported. He had refused evacuation, choosing to stay at his post to monitor the quantum field. The matrix is holding, but just barely. Through the viewport, Elena could see the Confluence escape pod moving through the chaos, dodging weapons fire and gravitational anomalies as it fought to reach the safety of the alien fleet. Several Devourers ships had broken off from the main battle to pursue it, recognizing the importance of preventing any human survivors from escaping. They're not going to make it, Torres said quietly. Elena felt something break inside her chest. Her crew was going to die anyway, and for what? She had condemned them all for a gesture that might not even matter in the long run. But then the space around the escape pod shimmered, and suddenly 3 Confluence ships materialized around it. They had been cloaked, Elena realized, waiting for exactly this moment. Their weapons lanced out, destroying the pursuing Devourers with surgical precision. The evacuation pod has reached safety, Zephyr's voice announced. Your people are safe, Commander. Elena closed her eyes and felt a moment of pure relief. 25 lives saved. It wasn't everyone, but it was something. 10 seconds to cascade failure, Chen announced. Elena opened her eyes and looked around the bridge one last time. Morrison stood at his station, arms crossed, facing the viewport with dignity. Chen continued to monitor his instruments with professional detachment. Torres had found a flask somewhere, and was sharing it with the few remaining crew members. It's been an honor serving with you all, Elena said quietly. The honor was ours, Commander, Morrison replied. The quantum matrix reached critical overload, and reality exploded around them. But instead of the death Elena expected, she felt a strange sensation of weightlessness, as if she were falling through space and time simultaneously. The last thing she saw was the wormhole collapsing completely, taking the Devourer fleet with it into oblivion. Elena opened her eyes to find herself lying on what felt like a bed, though the material beneath her seemed to shift and adjust to her body's contours. The room around her was unlike anything she had ever seen. Walls that curved organically, surfaces that glowed with their own inner light, and an atmosphere that somehow felt more real than reality itself. You are awake, a familiar voice said. Navigator Zephyr materialized beside the bed, its crystalline features showing what Elena had learned to recognize as relief. We were uncertain whether your neural patterns could survive the quantum translation. Elena tried to sit up and found that her body responded normally, though she felt oddly light. Translation? What happened to my ship? The Prometheus was destroyed in the wormhole collapse, as expected. But at the moment of quantum cascade failure, we managed to extract the neural patterns of everyone still aboard and translate them into our bioneural matrix. You are alive, Commander, though in a somewhat different form than before. Elena looked down at her hands and gasped. They looked human, but there was something subtly different about them. Her skin seemed to have a faint luminescence, and she could feel energy flowing through her body in patterns that were definitely not biological. We took the liberty of enhancing your physical forms to be compatible with our technology, Zephyr explained. Think of it as an upgrade rather than a replacement. You are still human, but with capabilities that will allow you to survive and thrive in the greater galaxy. Elena stood up slowly, marveling at the way her new body felt. She was stronger, faster, and her senses seemed incredibly acute. But more than that, she could feel something else, a connection to the ship around her, as if it were an extension of her own nervous system. The others? All 73 crew members who remained aboard the Prometheus have been successfully translated. They are adapting to their new forms in adjacent chambers. The 25 who escaped in the evacuation pod are safe aboard our ships, and they have been given the choice of enhancement, or remaining in their original biological forms. Elena walked to what she assumed was a window and looked out at a view that took her breath away. They were in space, but not the cold vacuum she knew. This space was alive with energy, shot through with streams of light that connected distant stars like a vast neural network. Where are we? The Confluence Core Worlds. This is where our civilization began, where the first species came together to form our alliance. It seemed appropriate to bring humanity here for first contact protocols. Elena saw dozens of ships moving through the energy streams, representing technologies and species she couldn't begin to comprehend. Some were mechanical, others organic, and still others seemed to be made of pure energy held in geometric patterns. The Devourers? Destroyed with the wormhole. Your sacrifice, all of your sacrifices, saved not just this galaxy but prevented them from spreading to countless others. The Confluence Council has voted unanimously to offer humanity full membership in our alliance. Elena felt a mixture of pride and uncertainty. Humanity had passed its first test, but at a terrible cost. Earth didn't even know what had happened out here, wouldn't know for months when the story finally made its way back through conventional space. What happens now? Now you choose, Zephyr said. Some of your crew have already expressed interest in returning to Earth to share news of the confluence. Others wish to remain and explore the galaxy. Still others want to serve as ambassadors between our peoples. The choice is yours, Commander. Elena looked out at the incredible vista before her. Somewhere out there, beyond the energy streams and alien ships, Earth was spinning in its lonely orbit around an unremarkable star. Her species was taking its first tentative steps into a universe far stranger and more wonderful than they had ever imagined. She thought about her crew, spread out through this impossible space, adapting to capabilities that would have seemed like magic just days before. They had volunteered for exploration, and they had found something beyond their wildest dreams. I think, Elena said slowly, that we have a lot to learn about this galaxy. And perhaps something to teach as well. Navigator Zephyr's crystalline features shifted in what Elena was beginning to recognize as a smile. Indeed, Commander. Welcome to the Confluence. Your real journey is just beginning. As Elena watched, a ship unlike any other emerged from the energy streams. It was clearly of human design, but enhanced with technologies that made it seem like a living thing. She could see her crew members through its transparent sections, working alongside alien beings in an environment that bridged the gap between biology and technology. Humanity had found its place among the stars. Not as conquerors or colonists, but as partners in something greater than any one species could achieve alone. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and for the first time in human history, they were not exploring it alone. Elena smiled and began to plan humanity's future among the stars.